Can a simple mechanical piece save the Ferrari season? The Scuderia arrives at Spa with a new rear suspension that could be its technical lifeguard. But is it enough to stop McLaren's overwhelming domain? Stay, because we are going to crumble everything. Ferrari arrives at the Belgium Grand Prix by dragging a recent story that doubts any glimpse of optimism. The Scuderia currently occupies the second place in the Builders' Championship. Yes, but that figure cheats. Behind there is a season full of irregularities, accumulated frustrations, and a performance that has oscillated between the promising and the disconcerting. With 222 points, the Italian team maintains a minimum advantage of 12 units over Mercedes, which reflects how tight the squad that comes behind. However, the figure that really matters and that marks the guideline of the entire narrative is another: the 238 disadvantage points that separate them from the current McLaren leader. That gap is brutal. It is not a recoverable difference with hard work or a pair of inspired weekends. It is a structural, technical, conceptual distance. Ferrari is not in the same category of competitiveness that McLaren in 2025. And that hurts, because they came from being runner-up last year with very high expectations for this cycle. For all this, Spa is not just the race. It is the great evaluation. It is the point where Ferrari, once and for all, must show that it is not simply surviving the season, but building something solid, something competitive. Engineers have worked tirelessly in a technical solution that can change the game, but if the results do not arrive now, it will be increasingly difficult to justify the narrative that 2025 is a transition season towards success. The clock runs, and Spa could be the last real opportunity to rewrite Ferrari's story this year. Ferrari has decided to bet strongly before the Belgium Grand Prix, and it is not simply an incremental improvement or a minor adjustment. The team has introduced one of its most important updates throughout the 2025 season: a new rear suspension. This component, often overlooked in superficial analysis, can completely redefine the dynamic behavior of the car. And for Ferrari, that redefinition is not a technical luxury, it is an urgent need. The SF25 has demonstrated from the first laps of the season an excessive sensitivity at the March height. This weakness translates into a very limited configuration range, which reduces its competitiveness, especially in circuits with elevation changes, prolonged braking, or variable conditions. Spa-Francorchamps brings together exactly all these conditions, and that is why the new suspension comes at the most decisive moment possible. The redesign has not been superficial. The engineers have modified the upper front arm of the rear suspension system, a piece that acts as the main joint in the transfer of load between tires and chassis. But it is not just a matter of geometry. The anchoring point to change has also been changed, which implies a deep review of the rear of the car. Why is this so significant? Because the loads that are generated in rapid curves, such as those of Eau Rouge and Blanchiment in Spa, demand that the car maintain its structural integrity without compromising aerodynamic balance or soil wear. If Ferrari manages to maintain the stable platform in these conditions, the SF25 could access for the first time in the year an optimal operating window of the Pirelli tires. And that is the key to everything else: traction, career rhythm, degradation, return consistency after return. The first essays have not been improvised. The new system was tested in Mugello during a day of filming that, beyond the name, allowed Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton to evaluate the car with real data. Although it was not an official test day, the behavior of the car under certain conditions already left positive signals. The information collected was complemented with advanced simulations that indicate a potential improvement of up to 1/10 of a second by return when the new suspension is combined with the new soil that premiered in Austria. And this is where the play makes even more sense. It is not just a piece, it is part of an integrated evolution, where each element is designed to free the SF25 from its deepest limitations. This decision also reflects a philosophical change within Ferrari. It is no longer about adapting the car to each circuit as if it were a patches war, but to provide it with a more versatile technical base. A more stable and less susceptible rear suspension to load changes not only benefits performance, but also the confidence of the pilots. And if something has been missing this year, especially to Leclerc, it is precisely that trust to push without fear that the car will break in two or simply become inconducible with minimal changes in track conditions. In addition, in medium speed curves, the most common range in much of the calendar, SF25 remains competitive. There, its equilibrium of chassis, combined with a revised mass distribution with respect to the SF24, allows a good curve and acceptable stability in traction phase. The latter, in fact, has been one of Lewis Hamilton's performance keys, who has managed to explode better than Charles Leclerc the curve exit thanks to his experience managing the torque in the delivery of power and his progressive piloting style with the accelerator. In classification sessions, when the conditions are controlled and the margins are refined to the extreme, the Ferrari has been able to get into the first 2 rows on more than one occasion. This suggests that the car, at least in ideal conditions, has a potential base. One of the big problems is still the sensitivity to the march height. This limitation not only affects aerodynamics that loses efficiency with subtle changes in the distance to the ground but also the durability of the flat background, with irregular wear of the table that has forced the equipment to compromise the adjustment of the car to avoid sanctions. This reduces the aggressiveness with which pilots can face sharp curbs, braking or abrupt direction changes. Throughout the season, that has meant that Ferrari cannot run freely. Each setting in the setup comes with a risk, and that conditions from classification to the management of career tires. In summary, the SF25 is a car with fragmented identity. It has bright moments and sectors in which it is shown as a top-level machine, but cannot sustain that performance beyond ideal conditions. And in a season in which McLaren has found a brutal consistency, and Mercedes has become an increasingly serious threat, that type of irregularity simply does not reach. Ferrari needs this car to stop being an enigma and become a predictable, competitive, and above all, reliable tool. This contrast has created an ambiguous internal narrative. On the one hand, the experience and methodical work of Hamilton is praised, whose influence on technical development begins to be remarkable. On the other, it is questioned if Leclerc can maintain the role of leader in an environment that now turns more and more around the needs of the 7-time world champion. In practice, this can translate into an involuntary bias towards the setup that best suits Lewis, which could generate a technical unbalance that further compromises Leclerc's performance. Although Ferrari insists on the equity of treatment, the reality is that in Formula One everything is polarized around the results. This difference is not limited to the technical aspect. It is also reflected in external communication. While Hamilton projects confidence, even on complicated weekends, Leclerc has revealed frustration in post-career statements, with a tone that sometimes brushes resignation. That emotional gap is dangerous. In a team like Ferrari, where historical pressure is permanent and the Italian press does not forgive, any sign of weakness is amplified. The Belgium Grand Prix not only marks the Ecuador of the 2025 season, but has become a kind of anticipated verdict for Ferrari. Spa-Francorchamps has always been a special circuit for its history, its technical demand, and its unpredictable nature. But this year, for the Scuderia, it means something much deeper. It is the point where it is defined if the team has really managed to straighten the course or if it will continue to be trapped in a narrative of frustration and wasted potential. The Belgian layout, with its high-speed curves, braking criticism, and elected elevation changes, is the perfect setting to test the new rear suspension and the entire technical package that Ferrari has worked for weeks. Spa does not forgive. Any structural weakness, whether technical or strategic, is exposed with crudeness. The circuit length implies that aerodynamic configurations should be meticulously balanced. Run with too much penalty load on the lines. Running with little compromises the curve. And in that narrow margin, the success or failure is defined. There is no space for excuses or interpretations. If the SF25 responds with the new suspension, if the car maintains its balance in Eau Rouge, if it manages to maintain optimal temperatures in the tires for long batches, then Ferrari may say with evidence that it has taken a step forward. But if it is erratic again, if the same problems of wear of the flat background arise, if the operating window is still narrow, then there will be no more room for illusions. In addition, SPA occurs at a key moment from the strategic point of view. After this Grand Prix, the calendar enters a phase of intense sequences. Hungary, Netherlands, Monza, circuits that require thorough preparation and emotional stability within the team. What happens in Belgium will condition not only the morals of the team, but also the technical direction of the remaining development of the season. If the package works, Ferrari may focus on fine adjustments and progressive aerodynamic improvements. If it fails, the dilemma will be much more serious. Is it worth investing in this technical concept, or should it be pivoted towards the development of the 2026 car? And this is not limited to the technical aspect. The pilots will also find an emotional mirror in Spa. For Hamilton, it can be the definitive validation of its integration in Ferrari. For Leclerc, the opportunity to recover the narrative control that has gradually lost. The circuit, with its sudden climate changes and its unpredictable character, demands an absolute temper. A great performance here not only adds points, redefine internal hierarchies, revitalizes egos and aligns the team behind a common goal. As if that were not enough, the context of the championship makes this moment a critical threshold. McLaren has escaped. He has dominated with an impressive solidity and has shown an adaptation capacity that no other team has matched. If Ferrari does not respond now, the title will no longer be a mathematical issue, but a tacit resignation. And although the battle for second place is still open with Mercedes stalking, that is not comfort for a team that left with champion aspirations.